So hi everyone, I'm Gil from Aditty, and for many years I've been VP of Engineering at leading companies in the industry like Upstream Security or NSO. And one strange thing that I saw is that logs are just keeps growing, but clarity and visibility, not really. So log grow as much as systems became more modern, because you had async flows and you had auto-scaling, and now you have also the AI agents that also emits non-deterministic logs. And logs just, keeps growing and growing, but the system is not really changing. So what we are actually doing is telling and storing the same story just thousands of times. And we pay a lot of money for it, and it's highly non-efficient. So what we saw is that, when there's retry storms or health checks that repeating themselves or stack traces that are just keeps on going and repeating themselves, we saw that when logs are growing, it doesn't mean that something actually changed in the system. So it's not necessarily interesting. So, and we're paying a lot of money for it. So what did we do? We went to the regular traditional solutions. So let's start with the first one, sampling. So we thought, okay, let's try to sample the data. Okay, in that way we might, reduce our cost significantly. But the problem is that when you sample, you actually might lose that needle in a haystack that you actually need on the real incident that might happen. The second thing we did is filtering. Okay, so let's filter. Let's put smart rules. Let's put smart rules in the agent, in the observability platform. But the problem is that when an incident happens, and I'm with a crowd here of DevOps, you know that the incident happens when the unknown of unknowns happen, not what you actually knew. So the rule didn't catch it, and you missed the actual data that you needed. And last but not least, aggregation. So we, of course, try to do log to metrics reduction and try to say, okay, let's go metrics all in. But the problem is that you're losing the story. You're losing the causality. You're losing the understanding of the user journey and what happened actually. The metrics are just not enough. So you might save money, but you lose the way to investigate. So why do we keep logs anyway? So we encountered an impossible trade-off. So we could do sampling, but then it's cheap, but it's dangerous. We can filter, it's quiet, but again, we're blind to when a specific incident happens. And, well, we can actually save it all, right? We can just go with the raw logs, but then we're paying heaps of money. It's so inefficient, and the ROI is so low. So there was no safe middle ground for us. So we realized that we're looking at logs in the wrong way. So if you think about it, the old mental model was how logs are, like an independent events, fire hose of raw data, just events with no connection between them. But if you look at it in a new way, you understand that what we're looking for are not logs, but are patterns. That's what's interesting. So we're looking for identity-linked behavior. We're looking for a user journey. We're looking for a context. We're looking for correlated flow so we can understand what really happened in our systems when an incident happens, or whenever we want to understand what happens in production. So the signal lives in uniqueness. It doesn't live in volume. So not the volume is important, but uniqueness, identity, and correlation and relationship. So what doesn't matter when an incident happens is that it happened 10,000 times. That doesn't matter. What actually matters is the trace ID, the request IDs, the identity, the user journey itself, the flow, to understand what really happened. So eventually what's interesting about logs, and that we found out, is the behavior, not the noise, not the volume, not the specific event, but to understand the behavior of a system. So the only way to preserve behavior is when we're doing a lossless reduction. And the way for us to do it is if we preserve three things. First of all, correlation. Second of all, rarity. And third of all, is uniqueness. Meaning, if we can find a way that you're not losing the identity, the correlation, the flow, the user journey, then we're not losing the story, we're not losing the context, and then we can still have our behavior. So then we can safely reduce and collapse those repetitions because we still have this uniqueness, we still have this understanding of what happened. And the repetition is not important anymore. Thus, we can get to 80 to 95% reduction without losing any ability to investigate what happens when an incident happens. So we did it, but we did it downstream. But what we found out that downstream is too late. First of all, a lot of the cost is already gone. You're already paying for network and other stuff as well. And you lose a lot of context when you're downstream, when you're not at the source. And you can't go back after this. So we found out that the only right place to do that, the only right place to do those correlations and those user journeys and to understand those logs was at the source, and only at the source. Because that allows you to preserve the investigation, and you can still control everything that happens. So you need to sit where the logs are created, not downstream. So we moved from the old way, which is, that's what you all know. We fire hose a lot of logs, a lot of events, we store them, and then we query and try to find out what happened. Instead, we are now emitting the signal at the source from the beginning. And then we preserve it, and when we investigate upon a signal. We're not investigating upon a noise. And that's a significant thing. So now the logs are becoming from an exhaust, it becomes to an engineered signal. It becomes to something that you control, and you emit that signal from the get-go, from its source. Because remember, if you'll ask every engineer or DevOps, what's the goal? The goal is not fewer logs. Developer won't tell you, okay, what we're looking for is fewer logs. What they need is guarantees. They need better guarantees because they want to understand the user journey when someone calls them at 2 a.m. and says, okay, I can't pay for an order. Or they want to be able to find out when something unique happened, when a service really is gone and not just noise, to understand that, okay, the system now has an anomaly. It's not the way, it doesn't behave the way it usually is. And they want to be able to reconstruct what happened when an incident occurs, meaning they want to understand what happened, they want the journey, they want the story, they want to understand what happened in order for them to solve it. So if we're doing reduction, and we need to do reduction, as I mentioned before, it can't break those invariants, because if it does, that's a problem. So if you want to see this in action, you can, and I recommend you scan this QR, but it's important to say, logs are evidence, not an exhaust, and that's the way they should be treated. Thank you very much. Again, can you repeat the question?
Yes, your company is helping us to filter our logs of the companies, and then by signal or something semantic that repeats itself, you know what alerts should I send and where.
So the question was about our company and what it does. So this is not a marketing talk, but but I would say this: if you'll use our app, you will see all the things and all those design principles I've mentioned here. You see them in action. So yes, you will be able to get that signal at the source without doing anything. And it will take you just 1 minute of Helm install. So yeah, you can look at it. And you can also, I would recommend, do the QR, see, for instance, what's AppFlyer told about it and in real life. But what was important for me to talk about here is not just about Aditty, but about the concept that led to how you design correctly logs in the modern era. How do you move from, okay, I'll throw everything at you and let's query it afterwards, to a signal-first system, okay? Yes? Sorry, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's just like instead of using like Elasticsearch and Kubernetes and then to view it in the Kibana, you just provide like one service that provides all. Like also the streaming, also the filtering, and also the dashboard view, something like that?
Well, yeah, so the question is, do we replace Elasticsearch or Kibana or Datadog or all the things? So basically, the Aditty has all of those, but we're not replacing anything. What's good about it is that you could still use your Datadog or Splunk or whatever and just do a Helm install, and you'll get the signal to your system as you knew them before. You don't need to change a thing. So yeah.
And also, how do you think that with the UAE making the effort with Israel, the partnership with Israel, doing the 1 million agents, how do you think this will also change the field of data aggregation with regards to moving from firehosing to signaling, and then what will be after that?
So that's a great question. I'll repeat. So the question was, now we're moving to an era of million agents that are going to be built. How is it going to affect what we just mentioned about logs versus signal? And the answer to that is it's going to affect exponentially on what I just talked about. Because think about it. What's the problem with AI agents? Let's just say I just pressed on a button, okay? And an AI agent is doing an operation. The same press could actually lead to 2 different execution contexts. So you have non-deterministic execution context with exponentially larger number of logs, but it's not just that it's bigger, it's even harder to understand them. So if you're not trying to extract the signal when they are created, you're doomed, you're gone. How can you downstream understand even what's going on? So you have to do it. So I would say this actually urges more those design principles and products like Aditty. It actually pushes them to be mandatory, or else you just can't control this chaos. Okay, no more, yeah.
Seems like your product would replace elasticity and all those other search engines designed around logs by bringing down the size, by compressing the amount of data, bringing us just the most critical elements. Am I understanding this correctly?
I don't know. I don't think it's replacing them. I think it's make them more. Yeah. The question was, are we going to replace products like Elastic and the products that allow you to search in logs because you now just transfer the signal? So I would say it's not replacing them. It's making them highly more efficient because, it's too big anyway. It's an ocean. So if you're taking that ocean and you make it a pond, you still need to search upon that pond, but it's a pond. You can actually find the fish, hopefully, that salmon that you're looking for, and not looking for it in an ocean. So it's not replacing it, it's making it more efficient. So yeah, any more questions? Thank you very much. You can talk to me in the break if you want.